What's up, guys, and welcome back to Tim Talks, the real estate show where we talk about real estate, life, and a little bit of everything else. Ethan, let's hit the intro music. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Tim Talks. I'm very excited this week. We have a very special guest, somebody that I've been wanting to get on the show for a long time. He's a busy man, so thank you so much for taking some of your busy day to spend with us here at Tim Talks.
I'm glad to be with you.
Yes, sir. This is Craig Inglesby from George Fox University, which is my alma mater. It is Ethan, our cameraman's alma mater. And Craig, tell us a little bit about what you do at George Fox.
Well, I have kind of an unusual role. I'm pretty sure I have a couple titles like athletic administrator, which is hilarious because it's not my gift set. But really, if you read my business card, it says Craig Inglesby JAG, which means just a guy. And so I tell students and parents that I work with that it's my job to help students dream about who they are and who they want to become and how do we go do that together. I think universities are sometimes good at saying goodbye, good luck.
Yeah.
And we believe in the athletic program that we should be pointing them and taking them. And so I run a mentorship program where we help student athletes connect up with people who are already out in the business field, whether they're amazing nurses or engineers, to get to dream about what life is like after university, and what better way to connect them with folks who are already doing that, who may have some connection to the university or just folks who have the time to come back and love on a college student.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It took me a long time to figure out what Craig's role was at George Fox because for the most part, you were just like having genuine conversations with us as athletes, because I was an athlete at George Fox. And that's pretty cool because that's a lot of what you do is just have genuine conversations with people. And yeah, you're just a guy, but you're a cool guy. So,
well, I like to think so.
Yeah.
From the outside, it might look like my job is to drink coffee and hang out with college students, and from the inside, that's kind of what it is too. So.
Yeah, but it's very much needed, and it definitely fills a role within an organization because I think a lot of kids, especially in that 18 to 22 time period. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but for the listeners out there, it's kind of a time where you are pretty confused and you're not sure where you're going. Maybe you are. Maybe you think you know where you're going, but you probably don't. And it was definitely a time period in my life where I had to figure out what am I going to do, and that's actually where I discovered I wanted to do real estate, because talking to folks such as yourself and the other amazing mentors at George Fox helped me realize that the passion was to serve people. That is what I wanted to talk to you about today, was service, because you are service. Craig is service. Pretty much everything, if you have a conversation with Craig, a lot of it is centered around serving other people. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, before I get into a little bit about what you do at the Bridge Network and what you used to do, do you still do it with Washington Family Ranch, or is that the past?
No, we've taken some students out to serve in that capacity at that location, but yes.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a long run of just how do we care for people by serving them well.
Sure. So I think the first question I wanted to ask you before you kind of dive into service is, what is your definition of service? Because we hear a lot about, my goal is to serve others. You should serve others. And we talk a lot about on the show about serving other people, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And that's a big part of all my coffees that I do have with students is like narrowing down the specifics. One of my, kind of big sayings is let's have the balls to have a bullseye. I apologize. Like, let's have the courage to define what success is. I don't think we shoot arrows at hillside and say we hit the mark. We pick a spot. And I think having the courage to specifically say, hey, this is what service is, and then a strategy for what we're going to do. That as I have, been in the hospitality world for 20 years in the context of camping and service, we're in the business of saying yes until we can't. You get a lot of time to kind of figure out, okay, what does it mean for us to serve well? And that really formed once I was doing that in the camping context. Now that I'm at George Fox, I would say my specific definition of service is number one, you show up when you don't have to. You sacrifice and pay a little bit of a cost so that you can create a connection with somebody, so that you can walk and invite, or you can invite them and walk with them into a different future. Now, I think that's relevant in my job at George Fox Athletics, but I also think it's relevant whether you're a nurse or whether you're a realtor, that you show up with zero agenda, zero transaction, and you show up when you don't have to. You sacrifice, you create a connection, and then invite and walk with them into a bigger or better or different future. That to me is the core of service. Now, there's many expressions of that in many different careers, many different markets, but to me, if you boiled it down, if in my world, if you're not doing that, then it's probably more of a transaction than a relationship.
Sure. We do live in a world where it's really easy to serve yourself before you serve other people. How do you fight the temptation to serve yourself when that's, we're instinctually, that's the first person to be served?
Sure. I think a lot of it is, a big part of my past has also been fundraising too. I still currently do a lot of fundraising at George Fox. And the idea is like, are we approaching the relationship with an abundance mentality or a scarcity mentality? If I approach the relationships, regardless of what my business is, whether I'm selling coffee or whether I'm selling houses, if I approach that and my customer base, I look at them and I say, hey, I need what you have, then it will always remain in the realm of a transaction. Mm-hmm. But if I approach it in the realm of an abundance, meaning if I'm raising money and I say, hey, you know what, this is what we're doing, this is the momentum that I'm participating in, and we're going to invite you to participate in that momentum. We're going to go there whether you decide to say yes or not, but we're going to invite you to come into that with us. Then the transaction is now not between me and the other person. It's between me and my ability to stay on mission and stay focused on building my momentum. And in many ways, I'm not asking anything from them. I'm inviting them to participate in what I'm going to go do, whether they say yes or not.
Sure.
And so it's hard to stay on that. It's hard to stay on that. It's a battle. It's a tension to manage. It's not a problem to solve. It's not. I wish it was a switch we could reach over and flip, but it's not. When you see it work in the relationships that you have, and once you taste of it, pretty soon nothing else will satisfy.
I absolutely agree. I think it's a practice. I think service is a practice, and the more you practice something, obviously, the better you get at it, and the more natural it comes to you. And so, I think for myself, when I started in real estate, we were just actually talking about this just a moment ago before we got on camera. I was wanting to create these connections with other folks and serve them because I'd been told that if you create connections with people, that's how you do well in real estate, right? You have to create connections with people. Well, that's true. You do have to do that. But my heart was not in the right place. It was in the mindset of, I will do this to get this. And like you said, that's transactional. And it wasn't until I realized that I just really need to serve these people and create this relationship with them just purely because I want to care for them and serve them. It wasn't until I realized that I actually started succeeding because I was no longer focused on closing a deal or getting somebody to buy a house, but I was focused on helping them as a person and serving them as a person. And I think people who serve, they attract a lot of people. And as soon as that happened, I started to attract a lot more people. Again, it's still a battle for me because then you almost you have to be careful that you don't turn around and go, okay, well, let's see where I can get these transactions from these people. You have to turn around and continue to serve the crowd that's just followed you. So that's definitely I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's kind of the struggle. Like you said, it's not like you flip a switch and you're no longer serving yourself. You are now a servant for others. It's an ongoing battle.
Yeah. And I think for me and what I've observed is whether it's, a soccer team that, I'm working with a very young soccer team this year and a great coach and they're young and they're right in the middle of that tension. And the thing that I remind them is put all your chips in culture, because winning is a byproduct of great culture. Selling is a byproduct of great culture. You know, truth is only as relevant as someone's ability to hear it. When you're dealing with your customers or volunteers in your organization or your, coaches, really I shouldn't be asking what is the truth that I'm getting them to buy in on. It's number one is, how do I become relevant enough in their world so that in the appropriate amount of time, I might be able to convey that truth in a meaningful and effective way.
I think you have to start by serving them to become relevant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's asking yourself the intentional question of, like, everyone has a culture that hovers around them. I could go into everybody in this office and go say, hey, Tim, if I'm hanging out with Tim, tell me the three things that he really delivers to you well. And they're all going to have an answer. And you're either going to be intentional about that or you're not. And I have chosen, particularly on a college campus, that, hey, these are the three things I'm going to be really, really good at. And I'm going to keep it on my radar. That's the culture that I'm going to create. And the relationship wins that I might have are all a byproduct of that culture.
Sure. What are the three things, if you don't mind me asking?
For me, it's no matter who you are or where you are or what your story is I'm going to accept you for who you are. Not a future version of you, but this version of you. And I would say I don't just I just don't love who you are. I like and who you're going to be someday, but I actually like who you are. And that means whatever you have, you get to come, and we don't look away and we don't blink anything. So number one is, like, I'm going to accept you. Number two is we're going to encourage you. The words, one of my favorite verses from the Bible says, the words of the righteous speak life. And I tell the young man that I'm doing life with all the time, there are no neutral words. They're either positives or negatives.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so if our words have so much power, we ought to wield it carefully and powerfully. And so if you're going to hang out with me at some point, you're going to get encouraged. And number three for me is you're going to be challenged. We will not sit still on the hill. We will hike uphill.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's positive, as long as it's real, all the pathways lead to the top, as long as you're hiking uphill.
Yeah.
You can't get it wrong.
Right.
You might have a little bit of a more windy route. And so the culture that I intentionally create around me is I want people to feel accepted, encouraged, and challenged. And if you're around me for any point of time, even if I met you on a corner, that's what's going through my head.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs one of those three.
Yeah.
And most people need all. I know I do.
I love that you're saying those three things, and you're saying how that's, it doesn't matter if you meet you on a corner, it doesn't matter if you've known you forever, whatever. That's what you preach and that's what you live. It's very true. And he does, because that's why he's here sitting in this chair having this conversation with me, is because I thought to myself, who's somebody that lives those words out and serves in the way you just explained, and you do that. And so again, like you said before, that will attract more people, and that will attract the relationships. And yeah, I mean, that's proof right there, is because you're sitting in this room here, and I wouldn't have asked you to come in here and have this conversation with me if I didn't believe that you are living or speaking the life into people that you are. So,
well, I appreciate that too. I think the other kind of the magic that goes along with it, I've never had anybody say, hey, stop, Craig, let's have coffee. You're such a wise person. You know so many things. Nobody's ever said that.
Yeah.
But what they will say is, like, hey, Craig, could we hang out? Because I know you're going to meet me where I'm at. I'll feel encouraged. I'll feel challenged. But mostly, you're not going to pretend like you've got it all figured out either. Because I think the reason that, I can connect and serve other people well is because I have either the courage or, the craziness to say, you know what, I'm still figuring it out too. Why don't we go do that together? And there's a mutual discovery that happens that is the natural byproduct of connection and relevancy. And once you become relevant,
mm-hmm.
then truth lands a lot better, even if it's hard truth.
That's why we're having this show, so I become relevant. No.
Well, I think in today's world, there's lots of examples of people yelling things without relevancy.
Yeah.
Even if it's the truest thing, and I've had lots of times whether it's young men or women on a college campus where I'm like, okay, they need this one particular truth, but truth is only relevant as someone's ability to hear it. If they didn't have the ability, my truth doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I ought to work to go have some relevancy, and then in time share. And I've had people in relationships where I've waited over a year to be able to tell them something at the right amount, at the right time,
right,
that it would land. You know, I one of the ways I say that is like, I hang out with our baseball team a lot. It's like, nobody wants to be yelled at when you're in the batter's box. Like, that's not the right time to be conveying that information.
Yeah.
And so figure out the time, the place, so that it's meaningful, connective, and can produce fruit.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, that's very true. I wanted to touch on something else that you said. I think it's your first pillar, if we can call them pillars. Acceptance. I think that acceptance is a form of serving someone.
Amen.
Because I like to think, sometimes I think about in my life, you know, who's on my list, right? Mm-hmm. The world goes to hell list, right? And who would I call? I'm going to call the people that are accepting, because no matter what happens, if I'm going through something difficult, if I do something incredibly stupid, if I have something really horrible happen to me, the people that accept you are going to be the people that you turn to in those moments. So I don't know if you have anything further to say on that, but I wanted to pick on acceptance because I think that's such a big piece, because I think it's possibly the most important and special way of serving someone, right? You can do things for someone, you can help someone, but when you accept somebody, that is so powerful, because you're taking who they are and you're validating that. And that's probably one of the most powerful things that you can do for someone.
I would actually even push more chips on the pile on that kind of idea, in that I don't think you can actually have a real and authentic relationships without some deep levels of acceptance, meaning most of what we see, you know, whether it's on a college campus or in a business or whatever, those are social contracts. I give you something, you give me something. Mm-hmm. And the moment one of those two sides breaks down, then the friendship goes away. Mm-hmm. Because it's formed on a transaction, a social contract, versus an acceptance, which is like, hey, you get to be whoever you are, wherever you are. I don't need anything from you, and I want everything for you. And the moment somebody hears that and receives that, there's freedom. Mm-hmm. And great relationships happen in freedom, which means, hey, I accept you, you accept me. I'm not expecting perfection. I'm expecting relentless pursuit. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be perfect in my life, but I expect you to relentlessly pursue. Mm-hmm. And without acceptance, I think most of what we see is more social contracts. I get to make you feel pretty, and you get to make me feel like I'm not a broken dude.
And you keep score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a gift that it's very, very easy to give if your hands are open. Mm-hmm. If your hands are open expecting something, then that's probably all you'll get is an open hand. Yeah.
And like you said, when there becomes an imbalance at some point, the friendship or relationship will end, because it's like you're keeping score. Now the score is lopsided. And it's not fun for me anymore.
For sure. And I think in a business context, that's really relevant. I was at this big event out in Utah with a bunch of guys who were doing major things all over the world, like stuff you see in the news. And, one of the guys said, hey guys, just remember, this is not a networking event. This is a networking event, meaning we are all in the business of just being brothers here so that we could be the net for each other to catch each other if something happens, that we're creating friendships and relationships that are free of transaction, that are free of judgment, and are just kind of there to feel one another on. And I'm like, okay, building a good net, not networking,
right,
but allowing people in your life and your community to be a net for
I
you
love that.
when you need it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's good. I know good information. I know good content when I steal it.
Yes. Yes. That's good. Yeah. I do have an interesting question for you, because we talked a lot about all the amazing things that can happen with service and the life you can bring to other people through service. Can you get service burnout? Is that a thing?
Well, for sure. I think I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've done it, in that I think in the process of serving others well, there's, like we said, it's, attention to manage, not a problem solve. That in my life, I was, helping run a big camp, and now I'm helping run an athletic department. And in your life, you're helping run a real estate firm. And there's elements of running the machine, what I would call, we got to run the machine.
Mm-hmm.
I got to, help coaches. We got to recruit. We have to raise money. We're building this. We're, dealing with busy weeks because we have football games and
There's a
Hall
lot
of Fames. And so there's elements that we just have to run the machine. Okay. And in your world, it's like, hey, you know what? We need to turn over some houses.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get to connect with people have to have our pulse on the market.
Mm-hmm.
We have to know our community, and we have to be a trustworthy source so that when someone that we know is listing a house, they're going to think of us first.
Mm-hmm.
We created a culture so big that it superseded our square footage of our office.
Right. Yeah. Our vision.
Yeah, your vision. And so there's elements of that. It's just run the machine. We've got advertising and we've got operational costs. And so running the machine is important,
Mm-hmm.
but without the oil of relationships, the machine breaks down.
Gotcha.
And so it's that tension between, are we running the machine, and in what ways are we adding oil of the relationships? If I do what I do on George Fox University campus, how I serve the AD, if I don't have a relationship with Adam, the AD, then it breaks down, because then it's all about running the machine and not about me having personal relationships where students in crisis, they feel like they can call and connect, and I can meet them and walk through a coach and a student who are having a hard time connecting. And if I was just about running the machine, that would never work. But because we invest in people personally without transaction, adding the oil to the machine, that's what makes it work for the long haul. And I think in times in my life where I've seen kind of service burnout happen, it's because we just focused on the machine more than the oil.
I love that, because it's not really the service that's burning you out. It's basically the business side that you have to take care of, right? Because that's like, I'll be honest, I wish the relationship part and the service part was all that I do, but ain't no relationships unless you run the business part too, right? Yep. I eventually I can only have so many conversations with my buddies before I have to turn out and find some other people to serve as well.
Absolutely. And it's a both and. It's not either or, it's a both and. In my camping life, it's like, hey, you know what? I had, 80 interns or, 80 college students that would come and serve. And I needed to recruit them and train them and get them certified on the ropes course and train them to be lifeguards and all that. There was a production element of it. But the reason it worked is because we had the basis of relationships there, and it breaks down really fast. If you'll know, in my experiences, you'll know that you're focusing too much on the machinery when things feel very managed. And you'll know that things are in balance when things feel very led. And, the world is not hungering for the next generation of managers. The world's hungering for the next generation of leaders, people who show up when they don't have to, and sacrifice and create connections and walk with people, whether it's your employee or somebody you're selling a house for, or a freshman softball player who is struggling. It's universal.
Sure.
People are dying for leaders.
Yeah, that's great. I think you just put words to a feeling that a lot of people feel, but don't really understand what they're feeling. That's awesome. That's great. We need more leaders and not more managers. 100%. And we could get into management theory and all that, but
Oh, don't even get me.
but servant leadership, that is probably my favorite form of management theory. Having taken some of those management classes at George Fox, what I paid attention to was servant leadership. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not about, managing people. It's about finding a way to serve people. And by doing that, you become a leader. And then you have a healthy organization because people are sacrificing for each other and they're working towards satisfying a group goal over a individual goal. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, we've all lived examples or experienced examples where in charge does not mean you're the leader.
Yeah.
And I think at some point we all have that wrestling match between impact and authority. And I think that's what I really enjoy at George Fox is that I get to do life with students in a pretty close proximity, and that I'm actually looking for, and I'm a pretty good hunter, looking for students that model that they're strong enough to follow, but humble enough to lead. Meaning they have no problem falling in and making others shine at the cost of their own glory. They're humble. They know how to be on a team. But when it's time for them to be in charge, they don't run around and say, hey, everybody, just remember, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And they hold it really lightly. And they use that as a stewardship tool, as a means to be able to stand back and go, look at what they're doing. And I get the great joy of doing life with them over 4 years. And then my hope and dream is that I get to go find great companies all over the Pacific Northwest and walk these students right to their front door.
Yeah. And
say, hey, you're looking for the best and the brightest? Well, I found them. And we've mentored them over 4 years.
And that's what the Bridge Network does.
And that's what we do. And I'm pretty unapologetic. My goal is to not, get students jobs. There's a whole different function for that on campus. My job is to change the culture of a town. And I do that by helping college students in my town change and then walking them to your town or your town or your town.
Yeah.
And that's how we change the culture of cities, because those are the future coaches and the future PTA members and the future, people who are pillars in their community, and investing in that leadership is I don't think it's why I was put in Newburgh. I think it's why I was put on this earth.
Sure.
To go identify students who are strong enough to follow and humble enough to lead, and say, hey, come walk with me. I'm going to punch you in the mouth as many times as I can, and I hope you punch me back, because we're in this together.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we get to be leaders worth following.
Yeah.
That was the kind of the best leadership quote I ever heard. All these guys at this conference, and they're all having this argument about what a great leader is. And they finally go to the old guy in the room, and who's kind of the OG, and they go to him and they say, hey, what's your definition? Or how do you know if you're a good leader? And he says, well, look behind you. Is anyone following? If we have the great privilege of doing life in front of the next generation, because many times this generation, your generation, has been told you should know how to do everything. And if you can't, all of the answers are at your fingertips. And if you can't figure it out by yourself, there's something wrong with you. And I just don't buy that. I think we all have to have people who are walking with us into the next stage of life. And if we can teach this generation that, you will be able to do for the next generation what my generation did not do for you.
I'm not even going to add to that, because I think I want to leave it at that. That was really good. Before I let you go, 2 things. Number 1.
Yes, I will sing at your wedding. Did we get that on camera? He's not engaged yet.
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 My girlfriend doesn't watch this, so we can talk all. So I am going to propose to her.
So what's the second announcement? No pressure. No pressure.
The second announcement, no. So 2 things real quick. The second one's serious. The first one is, give me the 3 most important things to do in a zombie apocalypse, or not to do.
Well, number 1 is I tell our cross-country team all the time, that as soon as zombie apocalypse happens, they have to come find me because I'm going to need some runners. And so number one is like find some people who like enjoy running, because the cross country people are kind of little like they run.
They're
for no,
weird.
They run for no
They're
reason.
weird. Yeah.
I had this policy: I run from things, I run to things. I don't run for no reason. So I think that's the the number one, and I think the other two is go to a Costco, take all the treadmills outside of the Costco and turn them around. So when the zombies get to the Costco, they just get on the treadmill. You're all good. You're sitting back eating the blueberry muffins.
And you have pretty much an endless supply of food and water.
You got a bakery there.
Yeah, entertainment because they have TVs and
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
You just thought of a whole new podcast series.
Ethan, I think we may be onto something. Wow. Okay, well, I know who I'm buddying up.
Clearly, I've thought about it.
You have. Yes, you have. Because that's an answer. That's not a spur of the moment answer.
Oh, no.
That's a man that has sat in bed at night thinking, what in the world would I do if the world was ending and there were creatures after me, such as zombies? Yeah, you spent some time.
I was speaking at a college campus once, and my friend introduced me as like, this man will not survive the zombie apocalypse. He will thrive. And I believe every part of that. Yes. Every part of it.
That's great. I think you should put you put on your business cards GA or JAG, just a guy.
Yeah.
I think you should put something about like some like special
zombie lord, maybe. Zombie slayer.
Zombie slayer special forces or something.
Who knows?
I like the idea. Okay, one serious question to leave the folks with a wisdom bomb. What is one, like you only get one piece of advice, the greatest piece of advice you could give to anyone that is leaving college, whether that be to start as an entrepreneur, whether they're, like you said, a nurse, a doctor, engineer, realtor? What's the biggest piece of advice you could give them?
I would say it's probably, along the lines of focus on the parameters. I'm going to give you an example. Someday, if you want to buy a house, what color is the linoleum in the bathroom? I don't know. Tell me that specific plants are planted in the background or in the backyard. I don't know, some trees, some grass. What about, how many feet wide is the driveway? You don't know the specifics, but you do know the parameters. You do know, like, well, we want a house that's a little bit out of town. I'd love it if there was a porch, and man, if there was a garden, that would be awesome. And so you know the parameters to the desire. You don't know the specifics to desire. I would say as students are, whether you're leaving university or going from one career to another, or I would say, sailing out from shore to go to a new land. If you focus on the parameters of a thing versus the specifics, then I could sit here and say, well, you know what you're going to do. You're going to go live in a house that's outside of town that's going to have a little garden, and it's going to have a porch. You might not know specifically where that is, but you know the parameters of it. And so whether it's your career or your life, I think I encourage students all the time as they're leaving universities, tell me what the parameters that you want. What are the desires that you have? And then I say, well, thanks for answering all that. Now, whenever somebody asks you what you're going to do, you don't get to say, I don't know. Because you know the parameters. You just don't know the specifics. And the specifics are the adventure that unfolds. And so just keep pursuing the parameters. I want to work in healthcare. I want to serve overseas. I want to go serve hurting and lost people. I want to work at a university. Whatever that is, go pursue the parameters, and the specifics will come in time. That is probably the thing that I would share with most young people, because if you focus on the specifics, what happens is you get analysis paralysis.
100%.
I'm afraid to make the wrong move, so I'm not going to make any move.
Get caught up in the weeds.
Caught up in the weeds and just like, hey, give me 3-4 parameters, now go. And the rest of the specifics will follow.
That's great. That's really great. Craig, thank you so much for being here with us today, and on short notice too. So
Hey, I'm glad to anything for you. Any way I can serve.
You're serving me.
I'm always joyfully available. That's my thing. I'm joyfully available.
I love that. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being here and sharing some things that you have learned and have taught over the last, several years. I look forward to seeing you in the community as I continue to be a member of the George Fox community. And if a zombie apocalypse occurs, you know who to call. His name is Craig, and he's just a guy.
Just a guy. Happy to be here with you, and enjoy getting to kind of share some of my mileage.
Yes.
I tell folks all the time I'm not the zoologist. I'm the zookeeper. I've learned a lot of this just from failure, and I'm still figuring it out myself. And it's fun to get to go do life with people like yourself, where we're like, hey, we don't have it all figured out, but if we go figure it out together, it'll be a great adventure.
Absolutely. And there's something very comforting about that. So,
amen.
Yes, sir. Thanks again. We'll take a little break, and we'll have Ashley on in just a moment.
Hey, my eyes are up here.
Welcome back. We have returned after a short break. We had Craig Inglesby. He wants to be referred to as just a guy. So he's just a guy. No, he's really cool. He's a mentor over at George Fox University, the university in town here at Newburgh. And boy, did he have some really interesting and philosophical. We really got into it. But some really cool things to talk about there. We have a very, very short segment here today.
Yes.
Very short. But really, we just wanted to come on here because as you saw in our little intermission there, we got Tim Talks shirts. We took Ben's advice from 2 episodes ago, and we started in the merch game. Mm-hmm. Not really. We have like 3 shirts. But check these out. These are so cool. And besides the weird vinegar smell that they have,
they do remind me of Easter.
They're pretty legit. So if you would like to cop a t-shirt, I would like one. I have one. But if you are watching this,
would like one.
She will definitely ask for one or try to steal this one. If you would like one, though, we can get you one. It will cost you a small fee, and you might have to bring Ethan some peanut butter. He's celebrating. But we have now released our Tim Talks t-shirts. I think they're pretty sweet. We might start giving them out we might start ordering more of those and giving them out to guests instead of doing the mugs, even though the mugs are pretty sweet.
A collector's item.
It is a collector's item. They're kind of one of a kind. But okay, just what's on your mind real quick, Ashley? Doesn't have to be anything special, but what is on your mind? Like what you dealing with?
Right now I am super excited that it's halfway through the week. Hump day. Well, at least when this is filmed. So I'm super excited that the weekend is halfway here, and also our McMinnville office is moving. So we'll be packing that up.
Yeah. We are part of Coldwell Banker, obviously. Ethan's.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. I'm going to the pumpkin patch with Peanut Butter Boy.
Oh yeah, I hope you guys know who Peanut Butter Boy is. You should because you should have watched our last.
Because of course.
You watched our last episode, and we showed you Peanut Butter Boy.
Yes.
That's Ethan, our cameraman. Are you guys going to the pumpkin patch together?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're going to the pumpkin patch, me and Peanut Butter Boy.
Just the two of you?
No. No.
Damn. Hold on a second. No.
There will be significant others there for supervision.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Supervising what?
The pumpkins.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. You got Pumpkin Patch coming up. I'm going to be in Eugene. I'm going to the Ducks game on this Saturday. It's the biggest Ducks game at Autzen Stadium in like 15 years. No. Yeah, like 12 years, 13 years. Why what are you smiling at?
I'm not a Duck fan, and I don't do sports too much. But
we know.
Is awesome.
We know.
We're not even bringing up the Mariners now.
She cheered for the Mariners after they lost.
But now I know.
Oh, now she knows.
Yeah.
They did lose.
They did.
And they got swept.
And the Astros won.
Yeah. That's tough. Before we leave, that's really all we wanted to do is show off the shirts. Yeah.
They're off the chain.
They are off. That's good. I like that. Any last thoughts before we go?
No.
what are we going to be doing this week?
Of course. We're going to be having our Halloween
A
special.
very, very special. It's going to be a short 10 to 15 minute segment. That's an extra special segment we're going to release for you guys. It's a Halloween special. It's going to involve things such as a candy corn chugging competition.
Oh, I'm down. I've been practicing.
Apple bobbing
Uh-huh.
and drugs. No, I'm kidding.
Whoa. Razor blades in the candy now.
Yeah, so there's going to be some fun stuff. We'll be in costume, full costume. It's a can't miss episode. It's like a mini episode because we'll have our other episode in addition to it, but it's going to be a mini episode. I think you guys will really like it.
Definitely a treat.
Yeah. There's going to be some wild stuff going on. We'll get Peanut Butter Boy in here in his costume as well. So he'll be here as well. All right.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
What number?
14.
Okay.
What number?
24.
You're so proud of that.
I am. I've been practicing. There's still a 4.
What's really
but
funny is that there's a 4 and there's still.
a purpose.
What?
'Cause
Kobe.
on June 24th, it is my Kobe year, but June 24th, I will be getting married. So
Oh, that was really exciting. Still used a 4.
I know. Original.
I used a 4 as well. That's weird. Something about the 4s. Okay. Ashley, word of the day.
Clickbait.
You had that.
No, I
really
didn't
prepared.
actually. I'm not joking.
You just kind of came to your head in the moment?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Peanut Butter Boy. That's one word.
Boy.
That's one word. Oh, man. All right. That's good. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Tim Talks. It was fantastic to be with you guys this week. Thank you so much for watching. We are going to be back next week as usual, as always. You guys know the drill. Go ahead and like and follow on Spotify. Leave us a comment anywhere you see our podcast. And if you're on Instagram, go ahead and share it. We will be back next week with a brand new guest, and we will see you midway through the week for our Halloween special. You folks have a wonderful rest of your day. Roll that outro music.